Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to No Capes, the show where we talk about creator owned comics with creators who own comics. Joining me today is Tim McEwen, a fellow Aussie creator. Tim, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone a little bit?
Hi. No, I'd like you to introduce me. Thanks. I hate this kind of stuff. I'm Tim McEwen. I live in Sydney. I make a comic called Greener Pastures with a friend of mine. He writes mostly, and I draw mostly. Um, and that's a comic that we actually made in the 90s for a few years. And we've just restarted making it now, which is very exciting. Um, and kind of picking up the um, the characters' lives at this point. What's that, like 20 or 30 years later? Um, I'm also an educator. I teach animation students how to draw. Um, I've been running the Ledger Awards for the last 7 years or so. The Ledger Awards are the Australian Comic Book Awards, basically, in a nutshell. Um, I think that'll do you for now. Maybe more stuff will come out later as we as we go.
Yeah, no, that's great. And of course, Adventure Illustrated, which you
Mm.
sent me yesterday, and I haven't made it all the way through yet because I've been swamped with work, but I am loving what I have been getting. And I was super excited, of course, to see Dark Nebula and Flash
Yeah,
Domingo in those pages. So I
yeah,
haven't seen them since I was about 14.
right. Yeah, yeah. So Adventure Illustrated is an anthology that Gary Challoner is publishing under Cyclone Comics. Again, a comic book imprint that's been around since the late '80s. In fact, um, so Gary is publishing this anthology, which includes his own work, Cyclone Force, which is including Dark Nebula, as you said, which is um, Tad's. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name because I was speaking to him last 2 weekends ago and was getting it very wrong. Tad's creation, the Dark Nebula, is one of the co-stars there, and Adventure Illustrated is where we're um, serializing the new Greener Pastures graphic novel. And yeah, that just came out. We did a Kickstarter, which was really successful by the looks of it. It's the first time I've been really involved in a Kickstarter like that. So I was really happy with that. And we just did a signing at King's Comics here in Sydney.
Oh, cool.
Was that last weekend? Feels like months ago. Last weekend or the weekend before. Um, yeah, we were the first signing in their new store on Clarence Street, which was a really great privilege. And very grateful to Kings, to George and Christine there for that. It was really weird too. Like there's a weird, there's a comic creator who calls it comics metaphysics, where so it was me, Gary Challoner, who's based in Hobart, came up to do the signing with us. Michael, who writes Greener Pastures with me, he signed as well, and Tad, the creator of Dark Nebula, was there as well. Um, but I think it was like 30 years to the day that Gary Challoner had signed at King's in their first store for their first ever signing, um, when they were a brand new shop. So it was like a really weird kind of coincidence that it was 30 years to the day exactly.
Yeah, that's
So great
cool.
privilege to do that. I was really excited. Very good to be signing and drawing for fans again. I haven't done that for too long.
Yeah, no, I can imagine it's a really nice feeling. I'm looking forward to doing that myself one day when I actually have something on the market, but for now, I'm happy to be talking with and learning from all the wonderful creators that I've had on the show so far. Okay, so today's comic is Self Made by Matthew Groom, and oh man, I have just had a mental blank and forgotten everybody else's names. There we go. Eduardo Ferrigato on pencils, Marcelo Costa on inks, and Troy Peteri, A Larger World Studios on letters, and Kyle Higgins on editing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So this is a really cool sci-fi comic. Tim, do you want to give a brief overview, or do you want me to do it?
Well, I don't know how far we can go without giving it away. Um, I'll let you give the plot kind of synopsis and overview, but um, before you get to that, it's a really impressive comic. It's such a professional level. That's an amazingly strong team that's been put together for that. I'm just looking over to the side because I've got a copy of it sitting here as well. Um, yeah, amazing looking comic. Really, really great read. So yeah, you go ahead and give the synopsis there.
Yeah, it's a really interesting comic. Funnily enough, we've actually got a game designer in the chat, so this is the perfect comic for you, Maze. Um, this is a comic about video games, but only on a very shallow surface level. It's a story of artificial intelligence, again, sort of also on a really surface level, um, and self actualization. And it follows the story of a designer who seems to be developing something more than just the tech that they should be developing for the game. And starts to realize that maybe some of the characters in this game are more than meets the eye and more than they should be.
Yeah, it's that thing, right? Where I'm not a huge gamer, but um, you know, growing up in the 80s with video games, the idea of what if this was real? What if there was a consciousness to the game? You know, more than it just being a program, is a really great kind of concept, and that's really what they're playing with here.
Yeah, exactly. And they touch on a lot of interesting, like, human topics, like figuring out who you are and what you want from your life, and learning to trust yourself and not blindly follow others, and all these sorts of things. And I've got the comic up on the screen for the chat to see. Warning chat that probably I'm gonna say about 10 minutes we will probably start talking about more than just issue one. So if you care about spoilers, come back and watch the VOD on YouTube. If you don't care about spoilers, keep watching. But I love the opening here of this sort of screen tone glow lightning effect.
And you know what? With that, when you first are reading it, as far as you're concerned, that's just a cool graphic as part of the design of the opening pages.
Yeah,
It becomes more important as you read through, and if you're clever, or if you're really paying attention, it makes more sense than just a cool graphic. And on a second or third read, then you go, oh, this is like they were dropping clues from from the end papers onwards. You know,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And the art is gorgeous. Um,
yeah,
they've done a great job here. I love. I'm not going to say necessarily it's not a rough style, but it's a textured style.
yeah, yeah. You feel like you can see pencil work rather than ink work, but it's fully finished kind of
Yeah,
pencil. It's really lovely,
yeah. It
and
looks like a
it flows
completed
through
artwork. But
the, it flows through into the coloring style as well. The colors are really lovely. Feel like it's brush work. It's obviously digital, um, but it feels like brush. It looks like brush. Great color sense throughout as well.
yeah, yeah. I love the vivid blues that they use throughout the book as well. I do
Yeah,
remember like that sort of blue that they've got here on their face markings and everything, being a very strong theme throughout the whole book.
yeah,
And yeah, like here we're in this fantasy realm. The general is giving the speech to the troops.
Can I, let me tell you, fantasy is not my favorite genre, and uh, to have the whole first issue set in a kind of genre that maybe the rest of the graphic novel, the trade paperback collection, does not actually necessarily follow. I think it was a huge ballsy risk
It
on
was.
the creators, and I once I got past that, I went, yes, you guys are definitely worth continuing the read, because you took a big risk there of bringing in people who are interested in that stuff, and then saying, well, maybe you're not going to read that anymore, and maybe even asking someone like me who may not normally like to read sword and sorcery and fantasy, that kind of thing, to sit through it, and you'll get the right payoff at the end.
Yeah, and exactly. And this is where we first meet our main character that it follows as well, who
Yeah,
sort of starts to transcend the genres more so than all of the other characters that we're going to meet. We've got Amala here, who is, she's objecting to what's about to happen, and we don't yet know that this story is following a video game.
yeah,
Yeah, as far as we're aware, this is just the story.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
It skip forward to the end of the battle and everybody's fucking slaughtered.
that's right. And in comes this other guy.
Yeah,
Who is
this guy in shiny armor who looks like he should be a hero, but I'm not getting hero vibes. I'm getting Prince Charming from Shrek vibes.
That's right. A little too much swagger there. A little bit, yeah, in your face, annoying. Very interesting kind of way that he talks as well. I don't think I've ever met Matt, who I believe is also a Sydney person. That's the guy who wrote this.
Yep.
But really, this is, I don't know, how many times he rewrote and went through so many drafts or whatever. But this is very well written. The dialogue is just peppered enough to that, again, when you go back to reread it, you go, yes, this is obviously what was happening here with this character. But on your first read, because you're just interested in the story, you kind of are just going with it. But yeah, hats off to Matt for that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's it. I'm going to discover a whole bunch of new stuff while we're going through this that I didn't think of on the first read through, as I always do. And it's actually one of the things I love about doing the show is I gain a new appreciation for this book that I already love every time we go through one. And just learn so much more about the craft.
Yeah, there's heaps to learn in this one in regards to storytelling, as far as plot and script is concerned, as well as the page layout and character work, etc. It's a really well put together book.
It is. And yeah, like these two have their little discussion here, and Bryce Mears being a smarmy prick, and Amalo's getting her back up, and then she starts to talk about the bad guy here. And this, to me, now looking at it, is immediately where it should have become apparent to me that this was a video game.
Right. Why is that?
Look at this edgelord douchebag in the middle of the page.
Yeah.
Surrounded by these energy tentacles. He looks like every 14-year-old goth boy's first WoW character.
Right.
He's got a ninja mask and the red and black robes and skulls on his belt, and he couldn't get any more of an RPG cliche character.
Right. Yeah.
But also looking at these tentacles and stuff, they look less like magic and more like tech.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
Yeah, and I also love the way that they've used the top tentacles as the frame between panels.
Yeah.
And also how on the bottom left, that one tentacle dips into that frame just to remind you where to pick back up.
Yeah, to bring you back into the storytelling.
Yeah.
Yes, I see in the chat there, Maze is saying, how did they decide to do that? Just in regards to page layout generally. And it's really one of the things that interests me as a creator very much is how do I decide to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Why do I decide to do that? And at what point do I stop deciding to re-thumbnail a page with another idea and another idea and just go, right, I'll have to make a decision on how this works. So yeah, it's about pacing and impact and what do you think is important in the storytelling at any given point, etc. And I'm a big believer in going from your gut just working from instinct, at least to begin with. And then, as you say, Sean, you're trying to learn what you can by dissecting these things, and you take that knowledge, and then you look at what your instinct has said, and then try to pull it apart, similar to what we're doing here, and say, well, is this working? And maybe I need to tweak it, or maybe I need to completely change it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's
Um,
exactly right. And that's it.
yeah,
Like I did my first published work earlier this year, and for that page, I did that was that thing. I flew by the seat of my pants. I did one layout and one set of thumbnailing, and I was like, okay, this feels good. Let's just give
yeah,
this a go and see what happens. And it worked out really well. And then after doing that, I went back at another set of sequentials that I'm working on now and looked at it and gone, okay, this needs to move over here, and this needs to go here, and that needs to be bigger,
yeah,
and still sort of again like navigating as I went, but I learned from that experience of doing and was able to put that into what I'm working on now, and it just your gut will tell you what feels right. You can move on from there and start applying technical skill and analyzing things and just sort of tightening stuff up a bit. But usually your gut will give you a good idea of what's going to feel nice to look at.
yeah. I agree. It's a good place to start. Your gut.
It is. And unfortunately, the chat won't be able to see this double page spread fully, but this is a fantastic spread with the desert scenes and just this Bryce Meir guy still being an absolute twat.
Yeah,
He's such a smarmy prick.
yeah. We understand very quickly that we're not to like him.
Yeah, he looks like he should be the charming hero,
Yeah,
but he's not. He's a Wall Street dude bro in shining armor.
yeah. And we're already getting the themes that you mentioned earlier about who we are and what we're supposed to be, and what we look like on the outside versus what we are on the inside. And this is immediately the opposites. Um, being put in close proximity to each other, via Amala and this guy that we don't like already.
Yeah, and I just really admire the look of this book overall as well. Like the expressiveness of these characters. Like, again, it's like we said, it's sort of a pencily, raw sort of feeling style, but it's also so crisp and polished, and everything is where it needs to be. And they've just got such a mastery over the human face, which I'm incredibly jealous of. I haven't got there yet myself.
Yeah, and it's stylized enough that it's not boring. It's actually a really interesting style. I think what you're seeing there is the immediacy of what feels like a graphite, pencil line mark there. But
Mm,
I, I wouldn't be surprised if this is digital, and there's underdrawing underneath all of that in different
yeah,
layers.
no,
At the end,
exactly.
the guy who's doing the pencils is just putting on this wonderful, final touch. Again, it's that feeling of you rough it out via your gut, and then at the end you have to decide just where is that line. That's that line. That's that line. That's that line, and you
And,
move along.
yeah, exactly. And I think from what I can see, it looks like they've maybe used a tone scraping tool over some of the inks, which gives it sort of that textured feeling even over the solid blacks.
Yeah, yeah,
And I really like that. I like that a lot.
yeah. I'm zooming in to what you can't see on your stream there. The bottom right corner's got a guy on a hood with very
Yeah,
dark. I'm zooming in on that. And yeah, it's got a really nice textured feel to it.
yeah, you might be able to see that a little bit there, chat.
Yeah,
I've zoomed in and pulled it over a bit, but you can see sort of the texture over the inks and stuff here, and it really makes everything stand out in a fun way.
yeah,
Yeah. And also, here is some freaking foreshadowing that I didn't really pay attention to the first time. That bottom left panel here, Marla's like, this isn't a game.
Yeah,
This could be deadly.
yeah.
And like,
It's
well,
a
good
great,
news for you.
yeah. But it goes to the heart of the matter there. For her, this is not a game.
Mm,
This is reality.
exactly.
Um, and you're acting as if it's a game. And again, this is about how we treat each other in real life. It's about walking the mile in someone else's shoes and understanding them, what their circumstances are, all of that kind of stuff. And that's what that is there. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, and
Great.
then that's exactly it. It's like, excuse me, this Bryce Meir guy has brought in his attitude of what's what, and he doesn't give a shit about Amala and Amala's lived experience. And look, honestly, that's very true to life, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
And yeah, bam, everybody dies.
Yeah, that's right. Because he's a jerk.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and here you go. What you were saying before with the static.
Yep.
It's a yeah, the loading screen.
Yeah. And this is where, right? This is one of the reasons why I love working in the comics medium, right? Because I've done film and animation storyboards as well, and I teach both of these things. I teach drawing, but I teach visual storytelling for comics and for storyboards. And one of the things I love about comics is that you get a little thing like this zap that's across the top of the page, and as a reader, you go, "Well, hang on, and you have the opportunity to flip back if you want to, right?" And we learn this, from the first time we read comics, unconsciously learn this. We can flip forwards and backwards as we please and have another look if we want to, and just say, well, is that what I think it is? And I flip back and I go, oh, it was there. I wonder if it means something. Flip back to the page that you're supposed to be on. Keep reading. Yeah, you can do that if you're watching something streamed on television, but it's not the same thing. It's not just flicking through at whatever pace you want, and um, something that comics do so much better than any other medium.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I love having that freedom to like actually stop and sit in the moment. Which yeah, like if you're watching something, you can pause it and look at it, but you can't really experience it in that
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
But with comics, even though it's just art on a page and words on a page, it feels like you're experiencing that entire moment when you stop to sit with it.
yeah. It's I don't know if anyone's done the research, but the the way that you absorb the information off the page for a comic is just incredible. I know Understanding Comics talks about that a lot, but I think there's so much more to it. The way that we innately just kind of um, absorb the information, go with the pace that we set for ourselves, decide that we're going to stop and look at something for a while. You would like, can you imagine that if you were sitting with a couple of other people watching like a really intense movie and somebody kept on pausing it because they wanted to look at
Mm-hmm.
the blue a little while longer, like it'd drive you mad. But
Yeah.
you do it unconsciously, innately, constantly as you read comics.
Yeah, no,
So
that's exactly right. And I love what they've done here with bringing back that same thing with the lightning and suddenly they're back to the start of what just happened, which is
yeah,
where first, yeah, knowing what we know now, that's obviously it's a friggin' loading screen. But not knowing that in advance, you would maybe assume it's some sort of a time loop or something.
yeah, yeah. But now you're intrigued, right?
Yeah.
Now you go, hang on, this is interesting. Um, what what is going on here? Uh, I'm 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 hooked. Right. And what page are we up to? Do you know what page number that is?
It is.
Maybe
Hang on.
20 or something.
19.
Um, 19. Yeah. It's like, well, that's pretty cool. Now I'm on. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also obviously right here is also part of that thing of the adjusting your worldview and everything. In that Bryce Mears obviously not going to do it because he's an arrogant twat. You can see that down in that bottom panel.
Yeah.
But in this instance, he did follow her lead. He listened to her.
Because he had to.
Yeah,
He didn't
because he
want.
had to. But it shows, for those of us reading, it shows that importance of taking others into account. That maybe other people know something you don't know, or
Yeah.
have something to bring to the table.
Whether you like it or not.
And it worked. What she said
Yeah.
worked. They got this friggin' dragon and off they go.
Nice insult to Bryce me while we're at it, though. Thank you. I feel good about it. Yeah. Flying
Yeah.
the dragons to the cliche, fantasy mountain with the glowing stuff going on. So now, as far as I'm concerned, being somebody who's not really into fantasy that much, I'm totally cool with this now. The fact that we're going with cliches, and I'm starting to know that there's a good reason for going with the cliches.
Yeah.
And I'm along for the ride. I'm going, no, this is cool. Cliche
Yeah.
me up. I'm cool with that.
Exactly. Like, there's obviously more to it than just a cliched fantasy story. Like, there is a purpose. These cliches are deliberate choices. It's not
Yeah.
bad writing. It's not lazy choices. Then these are obviously thought out and deliberate choices. And also,
I was going to say, and again, brave on the part of Matt Groom to do that.
yeah, yeah. And also, the page when they're flying away on the dragon brings in that video game trope and movie trope of the pillar of light exploding into the sky.
Exactly.
The MCU has had that in almost every single movie they've made.
Yeah.
And here it is again. And,
Yeah,
here we get another closer look at our little edgelord friend.
Yeah. Nice.
And that's it. He does. He looks like such a cliche. You expect his name to be Raven McKnight Darkness or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Gosh, I hope that's what they were going for. I hope they were going for cliche there, because we're ripping into it.
No, it seems like a deliberate choice. Like as we find out later, this is a video game.
Yeah.
So that's a player choice.
Yeah. And those of you that are kind of watching and going, oh, they're giving away the plot. Don't forget, this is the first chapter out of, is it 4 or 6?
6, I think.
So this is really just a setup, right?
Yeah, this is yeah.
We're just hoping that you're hooked by what we're talking about enough to go and buy the rest of the trade paperback and read the rest of it to see how this plays out, because it plays out in pretty interesting ways.
Yeah, the story gets really intriguing and a lot more involved. Like, discovering that this is a video game and that sort of thing it's like the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
It's the first act. You find out the basics of what the world is, and then 15 minutes in, they're gonna go, "Oh, what's this though?"
Yeah. I love that. That's one of my favorite parts of storytelling, right? When you go, oh, hang on. Okay, let's go.
Yeah. And here we get a little bit more of a little nugget of what the fuck is going on when she's stabbing this guy.
Yeah.
And he's talking about, changing everything and fixing everything.
If only she'd waited to count to 3, we might have heard more of that. But too late now. No, good little breadcrumb for later on.
Right? And then, obviously, Bryce Meir here is trying to shut her down and make her not ask questions about what that guy said. Which is what, sort of cements that was important.
Yeah. And then there's a lot to like in this, as I keep on saying, but the following few pages actually, even with my second reading, was making me laugh out loud because of of what Bryce Meir does.
Right.
like a impetuous child.
Right. Like, yeah, he's in this video game and he is arguing with an NPC.
no, 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 you're
Yeah,
doing it wrong. You shouldn't be allowed to do this.
yeah, no, that was me. I'm the hero. I'm supposed to do that.
Exactly.
As far as he's concerned, this is just a computer program. He
Yeah.
doesn't know anything about Amala's journey from here on out. So this dude is legit arguing with a Skyrim NPC
Yeah.
as far as he's concerned.
And then he
And
goes, "Hang on, I don't need to do this."
yeah, he gets that slight moment of realization, but that also lets you know how much of an insecure guy he is.
Yeah.
That even a digital woman, he
That's right.
he can't handle being argued with.
Yeah. All right. So get to the next page, right?
Yeah, and we get those flashes again. He's obviously trying to go back to the save point,
Yeah.
but
I,
she's not forgetting.
yeah. Well, that's the save point, I guess, where she starts to say, "What did he mean? The power to fix everything?" He's going, "Oh, I don't want to have this argument again."
Right?
He's trying to figure out a way to get through this argument
Yeah.
uh, as quickly as possible.
Yep, and he can't figure it out, so he just tries to kill her.
That's right. So that's another double page spread you're looking at on the screen there.
Yeah. You can see some of it. Like, they've sort of got a good shot of the middle
Yeah.
to see that there is actually the fight going on, and the pillar of light in the background. And
Yeah.
again, right at the top of the page, there's that loading screen again.
Yeah.
But it's getting more and more scrambled.
The next page is my favorite. After the double page spread. Yeah, where he just cops it time and time again.
Yep. Yeah.
How big
He,
go?
yeah, he's loading and loading and loading, and he's failing every time.
Yeah.
And then he just quits.
Yeah.
And obviously, she's never seen that before.
Yeah. Yeah, he disappears like in his own little kind of pillar of digital, light. And she's going, "What the heck's going on here?" And she's going to be thinking of uh, mythology and what the gods doing, and all that kind of stuff. So you tell me about what you think is happening on the next page.
Yeah,
One that,
Yeah. I was just thinking about that. I was having a look at it. I think, with her, she looks like she's touching the light in that previous page.
yeah,
And so I think she might be seeing the endings of the game.
yeah,
Like there obviously seems like there's multiple versions here.
yeah. I would. I'd love to meet Matt and ask him about this page because it's the only page that for me is unclear really what's going on because the guy in the hood on this page was killed
Yeah.
quite a few pages earlier, so it feels to me like this is the Valhalla, the afterlife, and why is she there, and I know these are questions that she's probably wanting to answer or ask herself as well, and yeah, it feels to me like
Oh,
when
shit.
the game, the game is over as far as he's concerned. This is where all the NPCs go. Is that what it is? Is it like
No.
Valhalla?
I think this is a flash forward towards the end of the chapters. Because you remember when... Okay, spoilers. Go away if you don't want spoilers, and come back and watch the rest of it. But this is... Do you remember how when she realizes what's going on and actually self-actualizes and gets rights, she demands the same for her fellows in the game?
Right.
And resurrects them all.
Right.
And then that's before she's in the real world. She does that and brings them back. And I think this is a flash forward to that, where they've been brought back and they've decided to play the game on their own terms. And then we get the story of where she gets that body and is out in the real world.
Right.
I think
Right.
that's what this is because vaguely am remembering a scene like that later in the book.
Right. Prepping for today, all I did was read the first chapter, or reread the first
Mm,
chapter. And it's been a few months since I read the rest of the book, so I'm not 100% sure. Because, like I said, Matt's a good writer, and he does do these callbacks and these breadcrumbs and foreshadowing and all of that kind of stuff. So you could be right. Uh, and we're again prepping for today. I obviously had to read this first chapter again, which was very enjoyable to do, but I wasn't necessarily just prepared to continue reading all the way through.
yeah,
I've got it like you. I've got a to read pile that's a mile high, but I'm absolutely going to reread all the way to the end again because this is so enjoyable. And the questions we're asking each other here, demand answers. So I'm going. I'm going to read through the rest of it again and see.
yeah. No, same. I think I might reread it this weekend because I need to know. Like, I have a memory of a celebration like that, but is my brain actually remembering that right, or is my ADHD just compiling a bunch of different stuff into something else?
Yeah, right.
But I have a vague recollection of a celebratory sequence like that with a few other things happening in like a 3 or 4 page segment later in the book.
Cool. Yeah. Well, we can check that out after.
Mm. And then obviously here is the final reveal.
Yeah, which is the biggest compliment I can pay to Matt and his team there is that once we had this very obvious change in location and the feeling of the genre and etc. With all of this reveal, um, I was ready to sit and keep reading for another 20 pages or so, and then it says to be continued. And luckily I've got the trade paperback, because if this was a single issue I'd be going, oh god, yes, can I please have the next issue now, because
Now, see, I'm
that
glad
is
that
the
you got that experience because guess who was reading it issue by issue?
that's for losers, man. Buy yourself a trade paperback, get the whole story.
Yeah, because I saw it on Comixology one day. I was like, "Oh, this looks interesting," and it was when it first came out. And I got to here, and I was like, "Oh no!"
The 30-day wait.
Yes, but no.
So when you were reading this for the first time, did you know that Matt was Australian, or you
No,
just bought it? That's
literally just saw it and gone, "Hey, that looks cool."
Yeah, that's the level that we should all be at, right? It doesn't matter what country you're from. If this looks cool and looks like it's your kind of thing, we should be reading it regardless.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah, good.
literally did not know until you told me.
Well, there you go. I said to you earlier that I've been running the Ledger Awards for Australian comics for the last 7 years, and this comic won a bronze ledger a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, cool.
Um, yeah, so in the Ledger Awards, there are three levels of award for comic books: gold, silver, bronze. And depending on how the judges vote, you'll either get a gold, silver, or bronze. And this got a bronze. And I was lucky enough for the first time to be actually on the judging panel, which I normally am not, because every year I normally have at least one comic, even if it's only like a 4-pager or something,
Yeah,
which means I really want to be judging if I've got something that could be judged.
yeah,
2019 was the first year in a long time that I didn't have anything published, so it wasn't eligible. So I jumped on the committee, the judging committee, and I mean, you can tell by the way I'm talking about this comic. This is obviously one of the ones that I thought was really worthy of getting a Ledger Award. So, yeah,
yeah. No, that's really cool. And there's so much talent here. It's just a shame that there's not a more cohesive comics scene and industry in Australia.
yeah, that's been the way of it for as long as I've been involved. And I was getting involved when I was still in high school. So from the 80s onwards, it's definitely been a an aspect of Australian comic books and graphic novels that it's just a really fractured scene, and there are really strong communities in different cities and different ways of making comics, from city to city. And there's some really strong communities like that. But as far as an overall Australian scene, community, industry, it's very hard to have that. I
It
think
is.
happening.
Because
Yeah,
even though, Australia is only so big, our cities are so separate.
yeah,
They're so far apart. It's hard to get people together. Um, and it's hard for people to know who's where.
yeah.
Um,
Even the age of the internet and live streaming and Twitter and Facebook, etc. There's still comics come out of nowhere. They're like, oh, what is this? Where did this come from? Who is this person? Why have I never met them before? Like you can imagine what it was like in the 80s and 90s when
yeah, no,
all you could
exactly.
was in the comic shop or in the newsagent if we were doing newsstand distribution, which is what we were doing with our comic. Um, so there's so much stuff that was in Perth that I've never seen. Adelaide, even Melbourne and Brisbane that I've never seen because at the time it was how do you get it from city to city, etc.
Yeah,
So
no, that's
yeah,
exactly right. And yeah, in answer to the chat, yes, um, some comic creators do if we can afford it. Because that is kind of the issue with the Australian comics scene being so disjointed, is that most of us are self-published. There are, I think, is Just Alt still like the only major publishing house in Australia?
uh, I, I guess XTC is that so that the actual publishing name. Uh, also publishing like their own little universe of comics as well. But yeah, even though at that level of comics, it's hard to keep the momentum and the publishing quantity up to the level that a international standard publisher probably
Yeah,
would.
exactly. Like there's no Image in Australia. There's no Dark Horse. There's nothing that big to sort of scout creators and pull us in. I mean, there are Australian people getting published by these companies. Obviously, this book was published by Image, but that still means that the fan base is mostly American because
Yeah.
that's where the majority of the marketing is done for these companies.
Mm.
So, a lot of comics creators only sort of do festivals and conventions in their own state unless they're invited as a guest.
Yeah,
Which still
exactly.
there's only still a small handful of Australian creators who are regularly guests at Supernovas and Comic Cons. It's usually
Yeah.
the same 6 or 7 folks.
Yeah, and I mean, if a comic convention is going to pay for airfares and accommodation to bring somebody from one city to another, um, that they hope that having that comic creator at their event will bring a few more people, specifically a few more
Exactly.
people to the door to specifically meet that person. Otherwise, it is a really hard decision for them to make. How do we financially make this a worthwhile decision? So
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And that's where it's sort of a self-perpetuating cycle in that, the community is scattered, which means that people don't know about all the good shit that's being made here, which means that the same sort of people are the ones who are known, which means they're the safe financial bet for the conventions, which means that even though there might be other creators who are doing stuff equally as good as those people, the people running the conventions don't know they exist because the community is too fractured.
yeah.
And
Maisie asking the right questions in the chat there, where she's talking about an industry body, somebody that can look after it, etc. But that takes money as well. That takes arts funding. That's not
yeah,
really something that's just been done off one person's um, bat. So
yeah. And
uh,
unfortunately in Australia, that's the friggin' issue, isn't it? Arts
yeah,
funding keeps getting cut left and right for what is considered high art and valuable art as it is, let alone trying to get arts funding into comics.
yeah, exactly. And again, I hate to sound like an old man, but it's been the case, the entire time I've been involved in comics. Comics
Yeah,
kind of fall in the cracks. They're not underground enough, but they're not high art enough, and it's always a difficult thing.
that's
Um,
exactly it. And like I started when I drawing, when I was 12, and started getting into comics between 12 and 15, and it was, that was the same. Late 90s, early 2000s, and it was still, you know, and it's still the same. There are, Facebook groups now and stuff like that, which are starting to connect some people, but there's still not a lot of big players being aware of us.
yeah.
So it's just sort of everybody supporting everybody. That's sort of actually one of the reasons why I started the Australian Illustrators Discord.
Mm.
So those of us that are drawing comics and stuff can start to get to know each other and start to share opportunities with each other in a way that's going to be easier to keep track of than relying on a friggin' Facebook algorithm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's one of the things that we hope is a benefit of running the Ledger Awards. You know, so the gold, silver, and bronze this year, the way that the awards work is there's not just one winner for gold and one winner for silver. It just depends on what the judges think every year. And this year there were 20 awards given from gold through the bronze,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we're basically saying if you want to read top-notch Australian comics, here's a great place to start. These 20 from the year of 2019, these are the ones that you should at least start with. And
Yeah.
we've got stuff there like Self-Made, which is published by Image Comics, one of the biggest publishers in the world. And we've also got comics which you can only find at your local zine fair if the self-publisher happens to turn up with their photocopied comic. So we've got the complete level, of everything in between.
Yeah.
If it's an amazingly well made comic, and by made I mean written, drawn the way that it should be for the kind of story it's trying to tell, um, then it's going to be on our recipient list. So yeah, we've got this stuff from Image, and we've got little A6 mini comics as well that have been either winners or shortlisters.
Yeah. I'm literally actually working on a 3-pager at the moment, that's written by Ryan Lindsay.
Yeah, rock on.
Yeah, so I'm hoping it's been a very long time coming because obviously, since it's just a practice piece, when paid work has been coming up, it's had to go to the bottom of the pile. And last year, my partner and I did go back to uni for a while because we were testing out doing a fine art degree and just working on our skill sets and stuff for everything that we're doing. And we decided that that particular school wasn't for us. It didn't teach what we wanted to learn. So that took precedence. I started it just before we started uni, and I was able to keep working on it for like the first 3 weeks.
Right.
And then assessments got too much,
Yeah,
and
of
then
course.
I had a catastrophic tablet failure and lost
Right.
everything. Thankfully, I had sent Ryan some screenshots, and I was able to download those back into my tablet and start redrawing from those screenshots.
Sean, look at you. You're a digital native. Look at you. You're sitting here on Twitch running your own streaming TV show, and you didn't have backups of your digital work. If
Yeah,
I was your lecturer,
that was
I would
my
be.
ADHD ass forgetting to save elsewhere besides just on the tablet. So now everything gets saved to the cloud.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, I'm probably at a third of the way through it now, so I'm hoping to get some time to sit down and finish that over the Christmas holidays because I've really been enjoying doing it. And yeah, I just messaged Ryan one day going, "Hey, do you have any like less than 10-page scripts that you aren't doing anything with? I want to do some practice sequentials." And so he dropped this in my lap and said, "Have at it." And it's
He's one.
been really fun, and that's been the thing that I was glad to have had time to take a break and do that work with Frankie White earlier in the year, because that's really helped me figure out how to do things to get this done better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's good to. It's good to work with Ryan. He's a good writer, and he's a good bloke as well.
Yeah, I love Ryan's work. I've got She sitting on the shelf behind me, beautiful canvas, negative space. I think I've got almost every book of his except for Chum and Dear Editor sitting on the shelf. And that's only
I
because Dear Editor sold out.
Yeah, I love Dear Editor, and partly because it's a funny animal like Trevor Bovis in Greener Pastures. I would love to do some sort of crossover. Are you listening, Ryan? Let's do a crossover.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if he's listening today, but he does know that next week's episode is about one of his comics again, so maybe he'll look at
Yeah,
that one. We've already recorded that one, actually. It's the Christmas Eve episode, so I recorded it early. But
right.
we did Eternal.
Oh, cool! What a great comic.
Yeah, and I had Fell Hound, who did Commander Rao, as my
Right.
guest for that one.
Okay, I'll tune in. I'll definitely tune in.
Yeah, Fell's work is great. Fell also worked on Project Starless Daydream, which is the one I did with Frankie White this year. Um,
Cool.
it's going to be a great book. I don't know how it's being released after the Kickstarter awards go out, because it was a fundraiser for the Trevor Project. So, like, the
Right.
hardcover books that have been done for the Kickstarter, that's the only way to get them. But I
Right.
think there's also going to be a digital release afterwards. And it's written by Frankie with like 40 artists on board. So each of us
So,
got 1 or 2 pages. And I mean, there's, little nobodies like me. And then there's people like Liana Kangas and Simon Regazzoni. And, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Simon's work on, I think it was the Boom Studios Power Rangers books.
oh yeah.
But it's a mecha comic. So having
Right.
him work on this book, his pages are just mind blowing, especially when combined with the colorist that Frankie got to do a few pages, who was the
Wow.
colorist for Frankie's book Broken Bear, which, let me just trigger that in the chat. I talk
Look at
about
that.
Broken Bear so often, I've actually just put a command in my chat to link it.
It's that would be a nightmare for me to do. Like that, you were saying it's a mecha comic. It's all robots and stuff. Man, I
Yeah.
don't know if I. But this Broken Bear thing looks really cool.
Yeah, again, it's another fantasy book, so not usually the genre that you'd like to read, but it's a really good book.
Looks really good. The
Um,
storytelling really really restrained as well.
yeah, and Frankie actually did another, like a 10-page short that's a sequel recently. I'm not sure if it's been released yet, but I got an advanced preview of the black and white work, and it was really cool.
Cool. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I just noticed, I was just having a look at the Ledger Awards, and I saw that Alicia was on the judging
Yeah.
panel. Um,
She's
Alicia was one of the first people I ever met when I moved to Brisbane.
not surprised.
Yeah, I actually lived with Alicia for like 3 days because my friend who just was helping me find a place in Brisbane was Alicia's housemate. So I stayed with them for like my first 3 or 4 days in Brisbane while I went and checked out some houses that I'd already lined up inspections with.
That's amazing. You should put some links for her in the chat as well. Her work is incredible, and she's so prolific as well. Like just pumping it out every time. I know we haven't had conventions for a year or more, but every time I went to a convention, I'd be picking up more and more stuff from Alicia. Her work is amazing.
Hmm. Yeah, she does do great work.
Absolute
I
gem.
always go to check out what she's got at the conventions and stuff. I can't always pick any up,
Yeah,
but I'd love to go and at least check out what's happening so I can tell other people about it.
yeah, and to have a chat.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's really cool. I'm going to also link the Ledger Awards in the chat so that people can keep an eye on that.
Thanks.
Because I know there's a lot of cool stuff coming out, like next year. Like, I know Ryan's got something cooking. He's
He
really
always,
excited about it, but I don't know what it is yet.
yeah, he's always got something cooking.
He always does. I'm so consistently impressed with how much work Ryan manages to crank out. And Ryan, stop. Don't stop cranking the work out, but stop getting up yourself for not getting enough work done, because the amount of work you do, my friend, blows me away
Yeah, he's
all
very
the
inspiring.
time. You are so impressive. Keep it up, but be kind to yourself.
Yeah, totally agree with you.
I met Ryan myself through my best friend from high school's older brother, because they went to school together.
Right.
And so I was just talking to him one day about something I was working on. He's like, "Oh, I know a guy who writes comics. He's got a bunch of published stuff, and he's done this about Daredevil, and he's done this." I'm like, "Do
Yeah.
you want me to introduce you?" I'm like, "Is that even a question?"
Why haven't you done so already?
Yeah, like this dude knew me from when I was 13, and I was like 25, 26 at the time. I was like, "Seriously? You even have to ask?"
I only just thought of this now. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously, everyone, go and check out Ryan's work. Go check out Tim's work. Check out Alicia's work. If you are an illustrator and you're watching and you live in Australia, join the Australian Illustrators Discord, which I'll just pop in the chat again. I haven't had a lot of time to do community events and stuff in there yet this year, but next year I'm hoping to do monthly or maybe bi-monthly. We'll see how my schedule goes. Art jams on Twitch. Michael Mullapola shared me a really handy web app that allows everybody who logs into that app with the code that you send them to draw on the same digital canvas.
Cool.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to setting up some multi-artist jams where we'll pick a theme and just all draw the same thing.
Yeah. It's always good fun.
Yeah, I think that could be a good way to bring the illustrative community together as well in like joint events, and then everyone can share the thing that they drew, and we've got resources and like an automatic tutorial feed of like short one-page tips from the Etherington brothers.
Oh wow. Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, I've got my bot set up so that every time they post one new one of their tutorials on Twitter, it goes straight into the Discord in a tips and tutorials feed.
Yeah, they're incredible. They're incredible. Such a simple way of presenting the ideas that they've got as well. Amazing. They were a great discovery when I finally stumbled upon them.
It reminds me of yet another custom command I'm going to have to add. One for them, but also for Mike Hawthorne. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mike, but he's currently the artist on Zdarsky's Daredevil.
All right.
And he did the Superior Spider-Man and Deadpool and a bunch of other stuff. But he's actually also a university anatomy lecturer.
Wow.
And so he's got some PDFs of his lecture notes that you can buy on his Gumroad. But also he came out with this book on Kickstarter last year called The Drawing Cheat Codes.
Right.
And it's just same thing. Like, I've got books upon books upon books of anatomy for artists, but there's always like a lot of text, and they're rendered in really high art, old masters sort of style. And my brain can switch off on that real quick if I'm not careful, even though it's something that I really, really want to learn about. But Mike presents these guides to anatomy in single illustrations with no words. They're just really effective diagrams.
Yeah, I'm having a look now at some Google images. Cool.
Yeah, and I love it. I've got a digital copy and the physical copy because I printed it off so that I can put it on the wall in the studio. So that if I'm ever stuck on something, I can just turn around and have a quick look.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I'm a bit of a process junkie myself. Like I really,
yeah,
kind of stuff. I love to look at it and keep copies of what I think is really premium stuff. And I had to stop buying books because I would buy any kind of how to draw and how to draw comics.
Yeah, I used to buy so many. I've just been really careful and particular about what I draw now. You might even have some of the books by one of my other guests. I had David Oakham of Oakham Arts on early in the series, and he wrote a lot of how to draw comics books
Awesome.
at some point. And I recognized the covers, but I didn't own any myself of his.
Right.
But he made quite a few back in the day. And he does like paper minis now, and he's starting to do more comics again. And we talked about Oliver by Gary Whitta and Derek Robertson.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and it's really cool. It's like a blending of Shakespeare and Oliver Twist,
Right.
but it's a post-apocalyptic survival sort of story
Right.
about mutants and superhumans and who knows what else.
What's the Shakespearean aspect? The way that the dialogue is?
No,
Or...
there's a particular play that is referenced. I
Oh,
can't remember
right.
which one it is off the top of my head, but there are quotes from that
Yeah, right.
specific play. But it is also very much an Oliver Twist story.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm slowly kind of working my way through your back catalogue there, so I'll get to it eventually.
Yeah, it's episode 2, I think,
Right.
if I remember rightly. But that was really cool, and I actually had Derek on a few episodes later, which was amazing for me because Derek has been an inspiration since I was early days of drawing.
Yeah, that's pretty huge.
Yeah, and he came on and we talked about the Rocketeer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that was a really fun talk. I feel like I learned a lot out of that one, actually.
That's a book that I buy again and again. If there's a better printing of it, then I will buy it again.
Yep.
It's such an amazing book.
I was more than a little jealous because while we were talking, he brings out his screen-used signed Rocketeer helmet.
Oh, what? I thought you were going to say helmet.
Yeah.
Gee.
Yeah, he's got one of the helmets from the movie, and it's signed by Dave Stevens.
Oh my God, that's incredible. Yeah, Dave Stevens is on my list of artists that is really sad I'll never get to meet.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
His work holds up, you know? Like, it's incredible for the time. It's also incredible for this time, is what I found while we were talking about it. Like, there's a lot of art in other comics, especially superhero comics, from that era that you take a look at it and you immediately go, oh yeah, that's from that era. That's from the 80s. That's from the early 90s. That's definitely that person's work from the 70s. But I found the Rocketeer looks like it could have been drawn today.
Yeah, yeah. It's partly because of the time period of the story, and the influence that had on the art and that the art had on that as well. But the whole thing feels totally timeless.
Yeah.
And it's such an amazingly high level of finish that it will remain one of the best comics ever.
Yeah. Exactly. And like the movie is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
I love those old school man of adventure sort of stories.
Yeah. And it's one of the best adaptions of a comic book as well.
Have you read Adventure Man? That is like ongoing at the moment?
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I haven't. No.
It's very cool. It's same sort of thing. One of those sort of pulpy, schlocky man of adventure stories. And it starts off telling the story of Adventure Man. And then, like, this is all in the first few pages of issue 1, so it's not spoilerific. We find out that we're getting the story from somebody who's reading books about Adventure Man.
Right.
And then suddenly it turns out that all of those characters are real. And this lady who owns a bookshop starts inheriting the powers of Adventure Man.
Right. Cool concept.
Yeah.
And it's by it's by Matt Fraction and the Dodsons. That's amazing. That's on my list of stuff to buy now.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm just waiting for the next issue at the moment because you know how these characters always have their swathe of backup players.
Yeah.
This lady is part of an extensive adoptive family, and they're all like really impressive people in their own right before they would get brought into the world of Adventure Man. And they're setting it up like obviously she's going to bring the family in to fill these roles.
Yeah. It's pretty cool that the book is called Adventure Man, but the main protagonist is female.
Exactly. I really loved how they flipped it on its head because like the original Adventure Man crew was still kind of that stereotypical oh yeah, I'm a hardcore Spitfire fighter pilot lady, and I'm a femme fatale, and this Indian guy does magic,
Oh no.
and the main guy is a big blonde American beefcake, etc. But then this new group of people who take on the legacy are the complete opposite in every way.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. And like there's disability representation, there's racial diversity, there's LGBTQ representation, and everything about it feels so natural for this book.
Yeah,
It's really impressive, and that's one that I want to talk about next year.
sounds like a winner.
And I can't wait for next year, by the way. I had such a wonderful response to this first season of people that have come on the show. And next year, I have some of my absolute goals creators to talk to that have all said yes, and I can't wait.
Cool.
I've got Doc Shayna coming on,
Oh,
Lonnie Nadler. Um, Jesus, I've got such a list. I've just got some amazing people. I'm trying to get Gail Simone to come on. I really want to
good.
talk to Gail, and I have sent Gail some of my D&D related work. So I'm working on that because I would love to talk to Gail about some of these books.
Right on.
Jen, is it Hicks or Hickman? I've forgotten right now because my brain is fried. Um, the Jensington. They're coming on next season, and I'm really glad because I really love their work on Lonely Receiver. And I'm just so eager to learn from all of these people just by listening to what they have to say.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Oh,
yeah, but that's the hour. Actually, we made it.
it zoomed by.
Yeah, it's getting toasty in this room, so I'm towards the end of the hour. These at the last couple of weeks, my brain starts getting a bit foggy because it's quite toasty, surrounded by sound blankets with a little pedestal fan on the floor.
Doing better than me. I'm not. We've got. Oh, the temperature's dropped here. Actually, it's dropped by nearly 10 degrees. Far
Oh,
out.
wow.
While we've been talking, I think it's dropped by 10 degrees. So it was up near 33 for a while there.
Apparently, it's 29 outside, and we're expecting rain.
Yeah, we just had a thunderstorm just as we were starting. I brought the cats in uh, before we started, and um, so I'm glad they haven't been bothering us. But yeah, I
Fantastic.
feel pretty warm up and down the east coast today.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's toasty here. Um, well, what have you got out that people can have now? And do you have anything new coming out that people can get their hands on soon?
Yeah, so Adventure Illustrated is the ongoing project at the moment. So Greener Pastures as a story will be serialized in Adventure Illustrated. We kickstarted number one just in November. I don't believe that we've got issue one on a web store just yet because we're still sending out the Kickstarter um, material. So we're just going to get that all done, and then we'll have it on a web store as well. But we're looking at hopefully kickstarting um, the second issue in January or February, and just to try to keep on pumping that out. So it's how many pages is it? I think it's like 30 pages, of comics that we're trying to get happening as quickly as possible. There's three stories. If you're into the man of adventure kind of stuff, Sean, wait till you get to the third story in that first issue that I sent you. Uh,
Gorilla Land?
yeah,
Red
it's
Kelso?
Kelso,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's literally the one that I'm up to. That's what I got up to just before we started. I've got the,
Cool,
the
yeah,
cover pages up right now.
right. So we've got Australian superhero shenanigans. We've got my comic, which is about a bull man who doesn't really know why he was able to get up on his hind legs and go to university and learn how to be a tax accountant or a tax lawyer. Um, and we're kind of we're working through that kind of story there. And you haven't even been introduced to him in that first issue yet, Sean. Sorry about that, but he's definitely in the second issue.
That's all right. I've just sort of put it up on the
Oh yeah,
screen. Adventure Illustrated. It's not very well cropped, but you can see the cover for Red Kelso,
yeah.
most of
That's
it.
the third story, the adventure, 1930s adventure kind of thing.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
incredibly chuffed again to see Dark Nebula at the start because he was one of the
Dark,
first fan arts
uh,
I think I did.
oh wow! Listen, you should get in touch with Tad because he would love to hear that.
I think I
Um,
might even still have the pictures I did of Dark Nebula in the back of a sketchbook somewhere.
yeah, no, he would love to see that. Yeah, so Dark Nebula, it makes a guest appearance. He's an Australian comics superhero from mid '80s, I think. So yeah, they're the two main things really at the moment. So you know, if you like, Sean posted my links there in the chat. If you follow my links, when the next Kickstarter happens, you'll know about it. I feel like Instagram and Twitter are probably the best places to follow me for that kind of stuff. But the easy one to remember though is greenerpasturescomic.com. That's a website that I've only just thrown together a few weeks ago. Finally, after making comics for 30 years, my comic has a website, and I'll just make sure that there's links to whatever's going on that website as well. But otherwise, just follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Um, the Twitter is Tim McEwen 67. That's TIMMCEWEN, and the Instagram is just Tim McEwen. So
There you go, it's
follow
in
me
the
on.
chat.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Got your YouTube there as well, actually.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, some old videos from back in the '90s. I've actually got a box full of my appearances on Cheese TV. If any of your viewers are old enough
Oh,
to remember.
mate, I customized some lightsabers, and my partner did some custom high tops for the Cheese TV boys a couple of years ago, actually.
Wow, there you
So
go. Yeah,
yeah, so if you see them playing with some lightsabers on their social media, they're
right,
from me because I used to
gotcha.
do props and costuming and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, we sorted them out with some custom lightsabers.
yeah. Cool. Yeah, top blokes, both of those guys. If you ever watched Cheese TV, what you saw on the television was what they were really like. That was not a
Oh yeah, no,
persona.
that can confirm.
Yeah.
Even
Really,
even at
right.
the end of a supernova, dead on their feet, uh, Ryan got in trouble from the supernova security because I handed them their lightsabers, and he immediately jumped into the aisle and started swinging it around because he
Yeah,
was so excited when it turned on and it made the noises and.
they've never changed, have they? So yeah, well, if you go to that YouTube link, there's my first ever appearance on Cheese TV, and probably the only swear word that's ever appeared on Cheese TV is in there as well. So watch. So yeah,
Awesome.
cool,
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show today. I appreciate your time and
great.
coming to have a chat. If anyone doesn't already know where to follow me, you can find me as Sean Sunday Art on all social media, and you can join my various Discords. I've got the one for my work and community and general chats. We have one for Australian illustrators, and we have one for Australian tabletop RPG creators as well. So you can find all of those at my link tree, which I will drop in the chat, and you can find in my bio on social media as well. Tune in on the 24th. Not sure if I'm going to do a live broadcast or if I'm just going to upload it into the VODs, but the final episode of the year is Eternal by Ryan K. Lindsay, another Australian creator, with Fell Hound, who was a collaborator on Project Starless Daydream with me, and their work is amazing, and you can go get Commander Rao on their Gumroad page as well. Until then, check back. I'll be doing art streams through the week, but this is the last live broadcast of No Capes for Season 1.
Woohoo.
We'll start back live again with Frankie White talking about Mech Cadet U on the 29th of January. So, bye for now, and thank you everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, man. Bye.